my wonderful students. It's Dr. Foltz. This video that I'm making for you is going to walk you through the lottery, specifically the literary devices. There's some of the literary devices that Shirley Jackson used. Now, before I start talking about those devices, I'm going to show you documents that you need to pull up. So first and foremost, let me share Schoology for you. So if you take a look at Schoology, what you'll see here, you'll see all of our different folders, and this is the folder that we care about here. This document here, or file here rather, the Lottery Literary Elements Lesson PPTX, that's the slideshow that I'm going to be showing you. It's going to have all the videos embedded into it. I'm going to show those videos, but I want you to be aware that they are available there. This document here is the worksheet that you're going to be filling out. All right. So let me stop sharing Schoology for you. I'm going to pull up that worksheet so you know what I'm talking about. The worksheet is this. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. You'll need to forward me this worksheet. It'll be due our next class period, but you'll need to forward this to me. You can handwrite it if you want, or you're welcome, of course, to type on it too. It's only a couple pages in length, and most of the stuff is fill in the blank, as you can sort of see here. So I'll just sort of scroll down so you can see it. This section here is the most challenging section, but it's really not too challenging for you. So without further ado, what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring up the slideshow. And again, that's located on Schoology for you. Where is it? There it is. It's right here. I'm sorry, it's taken me so long. There we go. So we're going to discuss some literary devices that Shirley Jackson uses in the lottery. Now, by now you should have already read it. If for some reason you haven't read it, make sure you do. It's on page 25 of our book. Make sure you've also answered the questions that come along with it. If you haven't yet sent me those questions, of course, you need to do that. So the three devices that we're going to be taking a look at are foreshadowing, irony, and symbolism. You'll notice that the language on this slideshow is very similar to the language on the worksheet. So what you should be literally doing is filling out the worksheet as the slideshow is going on here, all right? Now, if I'm going too fast for you, then because this is a video, all you need to do is pause it or rewind it for that matter. So because of that, for the sake of, I want to call it brevity, but file size, I suppose, right? Because this is going to be loaded up to YouTube eventually. That way you can stream it to your computer. I'm going to be going faster on this video than I would if we were in person. Okay. So first and foremost, let's talk about what we're doing here. Like I said, it's literary devices that she's using here. And eventually we're going to discuss the impact that those devices really have on the story, just the same way that we talked about the impact of literary devices had on the story, The Wife's Tale, or The Wife's Story, excuse me, by Ursula Le Guin. So what is foreshadowing? I'm going to read it aloud. Fill out your worksheet now. Foreshadowing is a literary device. Foreshadowing is when words, phrases, and or scenes hint towards future events in the story. So you should be writing word for word on those worksheets. That way you have a concrete definition that you can use for when we're having conversations or when you're writing something for me. Now, to put this in more layman's terms, I suppose, foreshadowing is when sort of the author is really giving you a hint, a preview of what's going to take place later on. During the 1980s, there were these Sylvester Stallone movies and Arnold Schwarzenegger movies and stuff like that. And maybe Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone was getting into a fight with a bad guy. And during the fight sequence, the camera would zoom in on like a giant meat hook or some sort of, big nail or something of that nature. Well, we know what was going to happen. Sometime during the fight, someone was going to get impaled on that thing. That's a very simple example of foreshadowing, where there's some immediacy that's taking place. Longer range foreshadowing might be where the author previews something in the very beginning of a story, and then it doesn't show up until the end. Let's say that in the beginning, we learned that our character is a former baseball player, and he used to throw pitches all the time. He was a pitcher specifically, and he hasn't pitched in, decades. But he used to be the very best. And the author lingers on that. Well, we know for a certainty that later on in the story, that character is going to have to throw something. His life or his family's life or her family's life is going to depend on whether or not this character can throw something. That's foreshadowing. Really, really simple stuff. So let's take a look at some examples from foreshadowing in a video here to help you out a little bit more. So I'll include these links in this posting here on YouTube.
A young woman is preparing for her day. She brushes her hair, sprays on a little perfume, opens her drawer to get her scarf, closes her drawer, and leaves her home. Wait a second. Did you notice something unexpected? Why is a gun in her drawer? Why is it presented in this way when it is not used at this moment? You are given a clue about what will happen later. This is called foreshadowing. Foreshadowing happens when clues in a story hint at future events. What about this situation? Who is the man in the photograph? What might the photograph be foreshadowing?
So there you have it with foreshadowing. Hopefully that's pretty clear to you. If for some reason the video is not loud enough for you, can't hear it, again, you can just go directly to it on YouTube with the links that I will provide. So let's move on. So foreshadowing in the lottery. Events, dialogue, item, and or character actions hint at the violence that's going to take place in the lottery. So Shirley Jackson uses foreshadowing. What's an example? Bobby Martin had already stuffed his pockets full of stones, and the other boys soon followed his example. Selecting the smoothest and roundest stones, the boys eventually made a great pile of stones. So my question for you, and make sure you fill it out on your worksheet, why is this an example of foreshadowing? You should answer this question with 1 or 2 sentences. You should pause the video also. I am not going to delay. I'm going to move forward now. Second example that I want you to ponder for foreshadowing is this. Soon the men began to gather, surveying their own children, speaking of planting and rain, tractors and taxes. They stood together away from the pile of stones in the corner, and their jokes were quiet and they smiled rather than laughed. The women, wearing faded house dresses and sweaters, came shortly after their menfolk. So the question is the same thing. What is the foreshadowing in the excerpt? And explain how it is foreshadowing. So in other words, what is Shirley Jackson foreshadowing here? And then how is it an example of foreshadowing? Now, keep in mind, we know what's going to happen. We know the stoning is going to take place. So this should be a pretty straightforward question. So again, pause this, write your answer down, unpause it, and then move forward. The third example. Although the villagers had forgotten the ritual and lost the original black box, they still remembered to use stones. The pile of stones the boys had made earlier was ready. There were stones on the ground with the blowing scraps of paper that had come out of the box. Delacroix selected a stone so large she had to pick it up with both hands and turned to Mrs. Dunbar. "Come on," she said. "Hurry up." Same question for you. What is the foreshadowing in this excerpt? Make sure that when you answer the question, you explain how it is an example of foreshadowing, all right? So let's move forward now. We're going to take a look at another literary device, and this literary device is called irony. No doubt you've heard about irony, and actually there's a strong chance that you have a misunderstanding of what irony really is. No doubt because of the song, "Isn't It Ironic?" So first of all, what is irony? Well, it's a literary device. All of these words or phrases we're talking about today, these are all literary devices, just like they were literary devices when we talked about Le Guin's story. So what irony is the contrast between the expectation and the reality. What does that mean? What's between what is said but what is really meant? Between what is expected to happen and what really does happen? Or between what happens to be true and what is really true? So first, I'm going to give you an example of what irony is, really concrete for you. Now remember, irony is when the opposite of what you expect to happen happens. It's the opposite. It's not something different. It's the opposite of what you expect to happen happens. All right. It'll be a true example. It's kind of brutal. So I'm going to give you a warning here. It's about my mother. My mother and father, they got married and then eventually got divorced. When my mother filed for divorce from my father, the paperwork came in and she signed it literally on her wedding anniversary. Well, this is ironic. The reason, of course, why it's ironic is because a wedding anniversary, you're supposed to celebrate the continuation of your marriage. The exact opposite happened, of course. What happened literally on the wedding anniversary was that the two of them got divorced. So it was the ending of that marriage. So this is why it's ironic, because it's the exact opposite. Something is continuing versus something is ending, all right? So this is why that moment was ironic here. And Alanis Morissette's song, Isn't It Ironic? She keeps listing a bunch of things that she says are ironic. She says, for example, it raining on your wedding day, that's ironic. Well, it's not ironic, it's just bad luck. Raining on your wedding day is not the opposite of what you expect to happen. What you expect to happen is to get married on your wedding day, all right? She lists a whole bunch of other things. She talks about how, for example, someone's been waiting their entire life to get on a plane and then the plane crashes. She says, isn't that ironic? That's not ironic because it's not the exact opposite thing. Getting on the plane is the action. The exact opposite would not being able to get onto the plane or being taken off the plane. Crashing and dying, while horrible, that's not the opposite. That is not ironic. All right. Let's take a look at another video. And once again, if you can't hear this well, if it doesn't translate well, you can watch it live, not live, but you can watch it directly on YouTube.
Picture this. Your friend and you are watching a sitcom, and the sassy sidekick walks into a room carrying a 4-tiered wedding cake. He trips, falls, and face plants into the cake. Your friend doubles over with laughter and says, "So ridiculous, so ironic." Well, quick, what do? Do you laugh along with the laugh track and let this grievous misinterpretation of irony go? Or do you throw caution to the wind and explain the true meaning of irony? If you're me, you choose the latter. Unfortunately, irony has been completely misunderstood. We tend to throw out that term whenever we see something funny or coincidental. And while many examples of true irony can be funny, that is not the driving factor of being ironic. A situation is only ironic if what happens is the exact opposite of what was expected. If you expect A, but get B, then you have irony. Let's take the slapstick cake situation as an example. When someone walks in, precariously balancing something that shouldn't be carried alone, trips, falls, and makes a mess, it is funny, but it's not ironic. In fact, you probably expect someone who is single-handedly carrying a huge cake to trip. When he does, reality aligns with expectations, and so that is not irony. But what if the sassy sidekick walked in wearing a gold medal that he'd won at the cakewalking event at the Atlanta Olympics in 1996? But what if that sidekick was a professional cake carrier? Then maybe there would have been a reasonable expectation that he would have been more skilled when carrying a ridiculously large cake. Then, when that reasonable expectation was not met by the tripping sidekick, irony would have been exemplified. Another example. A senior citizen texting and blogging. The common and reasonable expectation of more mature men and women is that they don't like or know technology, that they have a hard time turning on a computer, or that they have the old brick cell phones from the 1980s. One should not expect them to be connected, high tech, or savvy enough to text or to be blogging, which must seem like some sort of newfangled thing that back in my day, they never had. So when Granny pulls out her smartphone to post pictures of her dentures or her grandkids, irony ensues. Reasonable expectations of the situation are not met. That is irony. So while the cake dropper might not be ironic, there are all kinds of situations in life that are. Go out and find those true examples of irony. Irony go.
So what I want to do, I want to take a look.
Factor. A situation is only the opposite of what was expected. If you expect A
at this, because I think visually it makes it very clear what irony is for you. This is the expectation. The dog chases the cat. It is ironic that the cat chases the dog because it is literally the opposite of what one's expectation is. All right. It is the opposite of it. Over here, if we back up, when we show these two women wearing the same outfit, that is coincidental. It is not ironic. Now, if possible, if this person bought the outfit and they were promises they one-of-kind outfit, no one is wearing it, well, then someone wearing the same outfit might be ironic because the expectation does not align with reality. Nonetheless, let's move forward. So this is what I like you to do. On your worksheet, circle words or phrases, first of all, that are positive. The morning of June 27th was clear and sunny with the fresh warmth of a full summer day. The flowers were blossoming profusely and the grass was richly green. Now, what I want you to do is keep in mind the positive words and phrases you cited, circled rather. How is the setting of the lottery ironic? So let's back up here real quick. Likely, you circled words like clear and sunny, fresh warmth, summer day, flowers blossoming. All of this is very positive. So now my question is, how do these words and phrases, how is the setting that now has been described, how is it ironic in the lottery? Think, of course, of the end. Again, write your answer down. I'm not going to pause. You should pause to write it down. I'm going to move forward. The title itself is ironic. My question is, do people usually connect the word lottery and the idea of winning the lottery with something positive or negative? Keeping this in mind, how is the title of the lottery ironic? Now, it's a little pseudo-ironic, of course, right? That's why I said positive versus negative as opposed to winning a lot of money. A truly ironic title would be, instead of winning $1 million, you have to pay $1 million. But in this case here, the real question is, if you win the lottery, your life is supposed to become more positive, right? Much, much better. Now ask yourself, is the same thing happening here with the lottery? Again, pause, write your response. I'm moving forward. We're going to take a look at the last literary device, and this is symbolism. Symbolism you should already have familiarity with. We're going to look at some basic symbols, and then you will be left with the remainder of the time to fill in symbols that you see in the lottery, and then tell me why they are symbols. So first and foremost, what is symbolism? Well, we know it's a literary device, of course. But it says that symbolism occurs when an author uses a person, place, or thing, or an event that stands both for itself and for something beyond itself. Many symbols have become so widely recognized that they have become public symbols, all right? I'll show you some examples, but first, let's take a look at another video. And let me just pause it again to remind you that if for some reason the volume is not working, you can watch these videos on YouTube directly. In fact, I would encourage you to do so.
This is an apple, but sometimes an apple isn't just an apple. An apple represents temptation in the story of Adam and Eve. In the story of Snow White, it represents dark intentions. To Isaac Newton, it represented his discovery of the theory of gravity. These are all examples of symbolism. Symbolism is when something in a story represents something else. Authors use symbolism to communicate deeper ideas without having to state them. In the story of William Tell, what might the apple symbolize?
So that was the video. Let's take a look at some more common symbols. So again, look at your worksheet. So when you see a heart, what comes to mind? What does it represent? What does this symbol represent? I'll give you some answers. A lot of people think heart, they think love, like Valentine's Day, of course. Some people who play video games, they see a heart and they say, oh, this is symbolic of their life, like how much life they have remaining or how much health that they have. When we see the heart, some people think about doctors and hospitals, positively associated with health. And the list can go on. So I've done that one, that way you sort of understand what it is that we're looking for. Jot down what comes to mind when you see this particular symbol. And let's move on to the next one. The next one, of course, is a cross. Think to yourself what comes to mind when you see a cross. Again, pause, write it down. I'm moving forward. What about a cross and skull bones, right? What comes to mind when you see this? Something jumps to mind immediately. Don't say Johnny Depp, but you can talk about those types of characters that Johnny Depp plays. And then last but not least, the American flag. Now, this is a complex symbol because this symbol could mean different things to different people, even though the symbol itself never changes. When I say symbol, meaning the way it looks, doesn't change. So when we talked about the heart, the context in which we see the symbol helps to determine what comes to mind. With something like the flag hanging in the back of my classroom, the context is still education. The context is my classroom. It doesn't really change, but I bet you that there are 2, 3, 4 different viewpoints of what the flag symbolizes. So jot down why this also is a symbol. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop right here, this video. And I want you to look at the last page of your worksheet. I'm going to bring it up. That way you can see it. Where's my share button? There it is. Now, when you look at that last page of your worksheet, let me make this bigger so you can see it better on Zoom. All right, so you should have already answered these questions. Take a look now at this graphic organizer. It's pretty simple. This is what I need you to do. I need you to jot down symbols that exist, only 3 of them. There's more than 3, but just choose 3 of them that exist in the story, The Lottery. So for example, you might choose stones. I think that's probably the most obvious symbol in the story. But don't simply write down stones, because that's not useful to you if you were to write an essay on this. Find the page in which the stones are described. Write down that description of the stones. write down the page number here. And then what I need you to do, I need you to explain to me the significance of this symbol. Explain to me, as far as what do the stones symbolize? How are they a symbol? I mean, they're sitting right behind me, of course, right? To start you off, when we think about stones within the story, really one thing comes to mind, right? Something related to violence. So that would be a start. You want to say more than just that, but that would be the start. So what are two other symbols you can think of in the lottery? What are two other symbols you can think of? So folks, I'm going to stop the video right there. As always, feel free to reach out to me. My apologies that I can't be there with you. I wish I could be, but send me an email if you have any questions. This will be due, this document will be due when I see you next time. So next time, if it's a Friday, then I will see you on Tuesday, of course. All right. So I hope all is well. I will be monitoring my emails during the period in which you have me. So feel free to send me an email, and hopefully I'll be able to get that back to you within a relatively short time. Until then, take care. And if I don't see you soon, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Bye now.